Hello. So we're going to be looking over Chapter 4 of our AP Stats textbook, which covers the concepts behind designing studies. And in order to first review this, let's take a look at samples. Now, some key vocabulary that we're going to need to know is population, census, sample, bias, undercoverage, and non-response. And now these are all covered in the slide shown here. You can take a look at the definitions and pause the video if you'd like. Now, moving on to the next slide about poor sampling methods. Essentially, there are two main poor sampling methods, a convenience sample and a voluntary response sample. And essentially what these are shown here. And some of the common mistakes that AP students will overlook on the actual AP test is that they forget often that, for example, convenience samples will often show bias, whereas voluntary response samples are bad because they will often elicit responses from people who feel strongly or negatively about the question asked. In order to sample correctly, we will take a look at simple random sampling, cluster sampling, and stratified sampling. Now, a simple random sample, the definition is covered here, and essentially what you need to know is that there's no bias, and you need to know that SRS is able to be created by using a random number table, numbering the individuals in the population, and using the random number table to select numbers that fall within that range. And make sure you can even replace the random number table with a random number generator. Just make sure you know how to do it, because some AP questions will actually require a specific type. Now, we can take a look at stratified random sampling, and that's essentially dividing a population into separate groups called strata, and stratums should have individuals that are similar. And so basically each stratum can be divided into its own SRS, and don't confuse SRS with stratified random sampling, because those two are two very different things. And now we can take a look at a different type of sampling, cluster sampling, and that's basically creating groups of individuals based on location rather than based on similarity. And so whenever you select a cluster, you want to try and pick a cluster that's as represented. You want to try and divide the clusters. You want to try and divide the data into clusters that represent the population. And again, here's some more details about cluster samples. And finally, let's take a look at experiments. Now, again, here's some key vocabulary. You need to know observational study, experiments, treatment, experimental unit, statistically significant, double-blind experiment. Again, these are all defined on the slide. You can pause the video if you want to take a look over them. Now, let's take a look at completely randomized design. And so these are essentially cases where treatments are assigned to all the experimental units by chance, and the control group should be given a placebo or baseline treatment. And now another type of design is a blocked and matched pair, and this block matched pair design is the random assignment of experimental units to a treatment, which is carried out within each block. And what you need to know is that this is exactly like a experimental version of stratified random sampling. And matched pair design is a randomized block experiment, except with each block consisting of a matched pair or an individual receiving two treatments. Now, here are some helpful practice FRQs: 2001, question 4, 2007, 3 and 2, 2016, question 3. Thank you for watching. I hope this helped you understand Chapter 4 of AP Statistics, Designing Studies.